of this session, so you need to be very careful.
Within different angle of our daily life and different nationalities. And then, first of all, I would like to give the floor to Karel from UNFEL, Network of Elections Monitoring in the Region, to give us information on the status of democracy and elections in the regions, and also focusing on the limitation of rights during the event. So, the floor is yours, Karel.
Okay, so good afternoon. I hope everyone's awake still. I am Karel Gian Antonio Galang, as Rachel has introduced. I am the Program Officer for Campaign and Advocacy in the Asian Network of Free Elections. For those who do not know ANFEL, we are a network of election monitoring organizations spread across 16 countries in Asia. And we have a membership of 26 organizations all doing election monitoring in their respective countries. No? So let me proceed with my presentation. So in this, okay. So in this presentation, I will give some sort of an analysis of what or where we are now in the state of democracy in Asia. No? What are the issues that we are facing when we have elections, and what are the countries that are, what different countries face, what issues different countries face as they hold elections. So when we look at the face of democracy in Asia, this is what we see. Can you please? This is what we see. So what you see here is a group of 10 leaders composed of 9 old men and 1 woman. And what's interesting is that only 3 of them have been democratically elected. So you can guess, of course, Indonesia. You have there the Philippines, and you have there Daw Aung San Suu Kyi of Myanmar. But what's interesting is the most democratic of them all is not included in that photo, which is Timor-Leste. Okay, so next, we can say that in 2017, democracy has hit its lowest point. In a study by the Electoral Democracy Index by the Harvard University, you can see there that most ASEAN countries are flawed democracies. No? Only 3 fulfill the title of democracy, democratic countries, which are Timor-Leste, Indonesia, and the Philippines. But consistently, all ASEAN countries have declined in rankings and in scores all over every year. No? So you can see here, in Asia Pacific, New Zealand leads. And at the very bottom of the page, you can see that Cambodia is at the pinnacle of democracy, no? So, so my Cambodian friends are laughing. Okay, so next page. So, what is the regional situation in ASEAN? So, there appears to be a discussion that you cannot really achieve economic, advancement when you implement democratic principles. And that has been the major rhetoric that these autocratic leaders have been using to justify their rule without elections or without democracy. Second, as I've mentioned earlier, the highest rank is Timor-Leste, being a full democracy, and whereas the highest scores Indonesia and the Philippines are described as flawed democracies, meaning they fulfill most of the criteria as democracies, but they are missing certain aspects, no? And the rest of Southeast Asia either have held elections that are really bad, ruled by one autocratic leader or one party for a long time. No, so this is the state of democracy in Asia. So next, please. So as I've discussed earlier, there seems to be a rhetoric that oh, perhaps you cannot. Well, let's take the example of Duterte. What he promised during elections in 2016 is that we will make the Philippines like the Singapore. And lo and behold, he implemented certain policies that are really undemocratic, mimicking that of a certain city-state. And here we are now in this issue-filled country full of impunity and human rights violations. So, as we've noticed, people get tired of democratic processes because they want shortcuts. They are impatient with the messy processes that democracies have. So that is the main thing that prevails in our current understanding and our current appreciation of what's happening now. Second, we have this notion that for you to be ahead, you need to have a strong leader. And what manifests now is that when we rely so much on strong leaders, there comes a time when our institutions become so weakened that they are practically useless. Let's take, for example, the case of Thailand, where for the past 7 years, there hasn't been a real election, and hopefully next year they will have one. But for this period that elections hasn't happened, the election commission has practically done nothing to ensure that the rights of the citizens are the right of the citizens to vote are there or maintained. No, when you look at Cambodia, you have there a prime minister who has ruled for almost a party and a prime minister who has ruled for almost 40 years. But if you look at the institution of the NEC, or National Election Committee, composed of party members from a certain party and those allied to them, which basically eradicates this notion of independence. That's where we are now. Next, the rise of right-wing populism. So our elections, or the debates in our elections now, are mainly focused on the policies that aim just to please the voters without actually, providing concrete steps on how to achieve them. As I've mentioned earlier, Duterte had the presidency, or was able to get the presidency because of this. And it sort of eradicates, the traditional, the importance of engagement with our voters. I mean, the good thing is that, it's supposed to be an engagement between the voter and the candidate on how should policies be enacted, and voters should choose the candidate based on these policies. But if we're just hearing all the good news or all the good offers that the politicians give, what space do we have to have that dialogue? No, it sort of undermines everything. Next. And lastly, we have this prevailing theme in the current discussions that we have, where certain autocratic leaders create an enemy out of nothing. It is a politics of us versus them. If you look at the situation in Myanmar, where a certain Buddhist group accuses the Rohingya of certain, misdeeds, and thus justifies the atrocious experiences that they experience right now. which then the military government has adopted. And if you look at the issue in Indonesia, where there is a prevailing debate on the role of, the certain discussions on religion and the eradication of secularism in the country. And finally, in Cambodia again, where a certain government official accuses civil society of creating color revolutions, which has no proof. So this creation of us versus them interaction, it destroys positive interactions between the different actors, no? And now, so with a combination of these factors, let me give you a very good example of how not to conduct an elections or how not to promote democracy through the case of Cambodia. So, since 2017, titled Cambodia as a model of how not to conduct an elections, we see rule by law, rule not by law, rule by law, not rule of law, where basically the government has used the law to suppress any democratic actions, where the rule of law, or the rule by the law is used to eradicate political opponents. You have there the creation of the I versus them issue, I versus them techniques, using the color revolution against the media and the civil society. You have the widely utilization of judicial harassment and police powers, the use of espionage, as well as the use of the courts to punish opponents in politics, as well as the jailing of political oppositions and critics, and the criminalization of civil society actions. So, in conclusion, these are the problems that we have to face right now. And what you have to do now is ask Cambodia, ask the Cambodians on what they have experienced, and they will tell you how not to do elections. So, yes, so this is from our perspective. I would be welcome to answer any questions since the time is up later. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Let's give a round of applause to Karel. And thank you so much, Karel, for respecting the time. As the first principle of our conversations that we have agreed earlier this morning, please also be mindful of time, and each of the speakers, including the group from Laos, will have 10 minutes each. So please be mindful to look at Hanum, who will become our timekeeper. And without further ado, we will move to our next speaker. We have Chanthalavong from Equality Myanmar, who will share what is the current situation in Myanmar.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bounthone from Equality Myanmar. I'm project coordinator from Myanmar. As you all know, Myanmar is on transitional period, so we have many problems and issues to solve. These are the current country situation, civilian government with military power. According to Constitution, 25% of seats is automatically taken by military representatives in parliament, which is difficult for democratic transition. And also government officer, some government officers still in executive level. There is also corruption in judiciary and other sectors. Government try to make peace process and national reconciliation that ongoing armed conflict. There are still many old repressive laws and new reforms laws. It is also still some ultra-nationalist movements. There is Rohingya crisis and international community pay attention and increasing international pressure. These repressive laws affect on freedom of expression also. For example, telecommunication law of 6060, defamation charge of Penal Code 505B and C, media law such as media freedom, censorship right of media workers, State Secret Act routers, journalist case, peaceful assembly laws and Unlawful Association Act 71 and 72, section 15 to 18. The telecommunication law also treat to media. Since the NLD government, there are over 16 cases under the telecommunication law, 30 cases by military, and also 38 journalists are facing trials with various charges. 2 cases by military and 2 cases by government. 2 router reporters sentenced to 7 years in September 2018 according to State Secret Act. Freedom of assembly is restricted by peaceful assembly law as well. In the law, we have to ask permission from authority to assemble. It can be found many cases taken action with an offense against the state under section 505B of Penal Code of Myanmar and 6060 and 68A of telecommunication law. It's also banned demonstration in 11 downtown area in Yangon. There were violence crackdown on peaceful demonstrations calling for stop war on International Peace Day. Human rights defenders charged and sentenced under the peaceful assembly law and defamations in Yangon, Mandalay, and other cities. Unlawful association law also threatening to alienate women LGBT HRD. Registration law has already existed 6 previous governments. Organizations are encountering the restrictions of association laws. For CSO in some states and regions, we have to submit for permission. Now government is planning to set out INGO law because government want to prevent terrorists and black money flow into the country. To apply for permission, it is required for situation of the organization funds and staff. It is one of the restrictions of freedom of association. Other charges relating with land issue against land rights HRD, and these are other factors of HRD. There are no human rights defenders protection law in Myanmar and also weak in justice for survivor and strong culture of impunity. Restrictions of freedoms of movement in sensitive areas like Rakhine and Kachin, and concern on security or HRD working on conflicted affected area. And clear and weak role of MNHCR in terms of protection of human rights defenders. Lack of awareness on human rights and capacity from duty bearers like police, lawyers, judges, so they don't respect the human rights. And also weak in digital security skills, limited resources available for legal aid at the disposal of human rights defenders. For the national level, to promote awareness of human rights, we are conducting human rights awareness training for human rights defenders, government officials, MPs, and also and we also distribute IEC materials in 6 regions: Mon, Karen, Kanin, Northern Shan, Mandalay, and Kachin. To strengthen CSO Human Rights Defenders Network, we are conducting HR awareness training to CSO and giving protection fund for immediate protection for human rights with the partner of EU. For advocacy process, we make dialogue with government officials, MPs, and MNHRC based on the human rights defenders issue, which we had discussed in regional coordination meeting with human rights defenders, CSO, and lawyers in respective 6 areas. For International Action for Advocacy, our Executive Director trying to submit of UPR and Special Report for Human Rights Council. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sunakuri Sayama from Equality Myanmar to share about the situations in Myanmar. I know that you have a lot of burning questions, but I suggest that you wait for the next speakers before you can have a question and answer session. Now, I would like to give the floor to Ramiel. Ramiel Abale is working with the FDP and will talk about the situation in the Philippines, especially on the war on drugs that's being announced by Duterte and how it impacts human rights defenders' security. The floor is yours.
So good afternoon. I'm Ramiel Abale, and I've been working for 5 years in the Task Force Against the Philippines as documentation staff in Visayas region. So I will be presenting to what happened in the Philippines. So after Rodrigo Duterte was elected president, gross human rights violation of civil and political rights are happening alongside worsening deprivation of economic, social, and cultural rights, as well as unrelenting attack against democratic institutions, specifically the guarantees of check and balances. Next. And this is what happened in the Philippines. So, according to our president, Hitler massacred 3 million Jews. Then he saw 3 million addicts in our nation. So, he's be happy to slaughter them. So, that's what's happened. And that next is the recent killed 20 years old, Carl Nunez, a barangay volunteer inside his home in San Valley, Parañaque. And out of many victims of war on drugs, 18 of it were minors, and the youngest is 4 years old, Althea Barbon from Bulungan, Negros Oriental. And next, in Cebu City particularly, last 4 months, on 132 days, 180 number of deaths. And Cebu City was called the Queen City of the South, but now we're calling it the Criminal City of the South. Next, please. And mostly of the victims of the war on drugs are the poorest among the poor. They are the so-called, even they call it high-value targets. But during our investigation, during our documentation, we found out that they are also the amongst of the poorest of the poor. Next. So, according to real numbers, this is from the PNP. So, last July 2016 until November 2017. So, 79,193 anti-drug operation conducted, and 118,000 were arrested. And out of it, drug personalities who died in anti-drug operation is 3,967. Next. So, PNP's Operation Tokham or Tokham is considered a success. It yielded 1,266,966 surrenderers. So that's it. And the government didn't have any activities for rehabilitation. But in other ways, some of the religious sectors initiated rehabilitation in different areas in the Philippines. Next. Yes, so we call it a 100% success. Next, please. So on international obligations, yes, our BFP Secretary Cayetano told us that there's no new wave of killings in the Philippines, just a political tactics of changing definition. Then it worsened the culture of impunity. Even the face of incontrovertible CCTV evidence, no genuine investigation. So if you take a look at the picture, the policeman moved the CCTV camera in the other direction. And that picture also shows that, according to Rafi Lerma, a journalist, a closer look to one of the 1,000 crime scenes where drug personalities allegedly fought back in Laban with police. But when we look at the picture, he has a bruises in his head. So, possibility, there he was also handcuffed before he was killed. Then, revision of the Constitution for Federalism. Because further liberation of investment, opening up of country for foreign ownership, term extension of sitting elective officials including the president, tapos no election on national and local levels. And it will also strengthen the rule of political dynasties who will have all the powers to impose local laws as they see fit. As regional authorities will have power to allow entry of large-scale mining and other corporation in their area. So that is the scenario of the Philippines. So according to Section 26, Article 11, so the Constitution did not allow political dynasty. But out of it, 250 were among the families of the political dynasties in the Philippines. And 56% of it are the elite. And last year, our president continued declaring martial law in full province of Mindanao. 6,000 estimated number of backwits of internally displaced persons in Lanao del Sur, nearby the province and the provinces. And 1,000 were killed. 47 civilians were also killed according to Rappler on October 11. Then historical revision. Our president allowed President Marcos to be buried in Libingan ng Nabayani on November 18, 2016. Then the abolition of Presidential Commission on Good Governance that was created to cover the alleged billions of dollars and other assets stolen by the Marcoses. Then cancellation of peace talks with the NPAs. The order is to crush synonyms of that or be destroyed, and to collateral of all the sentence is you destroy, and if you have to kill, do it. And reimposition of the death penalty. And in the Philippines, we don't have any restriction of all the freedoms. But if we vote against the government, we are prone in any intimidation, harassment, and even kill. And most of the HRDs in the Philippines were also killed upon this war on drugs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing such an important information with us, Daniel. So I also want to highlight that earlier this morning we agreed that we have a very strict audio-visual policy. So please, every time you want to take picture or video, please ask the speakers if the person is comfortable with you taking pictures and videos, and if the information that being shared here can be circulated or not, because it will impacting their well-being when they're going back to their country. So before we move on, I would like to ask the audience if there is any burning questions that you would like to ask to the speakers, or shall we proceed with the next speaker? Okay, so the next speakers will be splitting their time into 3 persons. We have friends from Alliance for Democracy in Laos, and then you will have 10 minutes to share about your remarks on the situations in the countries and your observations. And please be mindful to look at Hanung as a timekeeper. But now, can you please direct me which presentation that you want me to showcase? The first presentation? Okay, this one? The PDF? Okay. Yeah, this one, right? Okay, so the floor is yours, and Hannah will be your timekeeper. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Bounthone Chanthalavong. So I am the president of Alliance for Democracy in Laos. First, I will introduction. The Alliance for Democracy in Laos is the global network of human rights advocates for Laos. We work with international institutions like UN, EU, international NGO like Amnesty International. Since 2012, ADL participates in ACSC APF and work together with other CSOs in ASEAN. The last year, the situation in Laos became more and more difficult for the people in that poor country. The main reason for this is the very bad human rights situation in Laos. Political freedom. The freedom of expression, especially freedom of the press, is hurtfully suppressed by the regime. Since the decree number 327, after has been interacted, it's hardly impossible to criticize the government of the party. Every critique is now a discreditation of the regime. So dissidents are sentenced up to 20 years prison. We remember of the case of the 3 young bloggers in 2016 and 2017. The people are already being arrested when they say something on the social media. It does not even happen. Today can assembly peaceful. The information exchange is also blocked. The reason is the dictatorial one-party system in Laos. People's rights. The right of the self-determination of the people is endangered in Laos the influence of neighboring countries. China and Vietnam have meanwhile resettled proposals. Officially, Laos is an independent country, but in fact it's a Chinese-Vietnamese colony. Laos-Vietnamese Friendship Treaty of 18 July 1977, which was then closed for 20 years and renewed every 10 years, granted Vietnam control over the Lao people, over the Lao People's Republic. Key officers in Laos continue to be occupied by Vietnamese, and Vietnamese advisors and suppliers are still present in Laos with an increasing strength. This also continues in the political offices. The many special economic zones that belongs to China have mean in the population is no longer measured to their own size. In the meantime, China entered the ASEAN countries. It is to be thought that when in the planned express then to Laos by the Chinese is done. The Chinese will invest in message. Thank you.
Yep. Touy?
Hello again, everybody here. My name is Touy Manikham. I am a Vice President of Allied Politics Democracy in Laos, based in New Zealand. Today, I'm not talking about the human rights, but the topic I have two topics. First, the land grabbing. More and more people in Laos are losing their homes and property to foreign investors or due to questionable major projects such as dam project and the construction of so-called special economic zone. The Lao are becoming less and less master in their own country. So it's now very difficult to develop the country because the government loses the control about the country. Meanwhile, about 30% of the land area of Laos is owned by the foreign investors. One of the main reasons for this abuse in this country is the enormous corruption, which the government still has not under control because most of the government members are corrupt too. If they keep continue do this, there are no more land for the people to live. They might, if they want to live in that country, they are to rent the land from the foreign investors. They are shameful for them. Now, I'm talking about the topic of the dam. Might be the Vietnamese might be interested on this portion. The dam construction are one of the big reasons for the environment and human rights violations in Laos PDR. These projects are responsible for the largest number of forced relocation. 160 dams are planned. China has already built 8 and planned 11 more. But in Laos, there are currently 46 dams, too much already, and 54 other projects by 2020. A total of 100 dams are to be completed. Most of these dam projects are located in the tributary, 11 of which are planned directly on the Mekong. 3 are under construction, for the 4th has already signed for the contract. The dams on the Mekong are seen as the threat of the diversity of animals and plants. Study shows that fish and stock will decline by up to 40% if all the dams on the Mekong River are completed as planned. Furthermore, most affected area is the Mekong Delta, known as right chamber in Southeast Asia. The follow-up has come from on July 23rd this year. There was a repeat dam failure in the province of Attapun, in the south of Laos. During the night of 23rd July this year, the unfinished dam of $1.2 billion Sapien Se Nam Noi hydropower project collapsed, and after heavy rain. Officially, there are only 39 dead, but it is doubted by the population. The misfortune was therefore predictable in our view, especially since this is not the first disaster of this kind. Almost 3 dams have been broken until now. So in 2016, the Sekaman in the Sekong province. Already on 11 September 2017, the Nak-Ao Dam in the province of Songapore at the Chanthalavong area was broken. After heavy rain on July 23rd this year, the Nam Bang Dam near the city of Pak Bang province of Kambodia. But after that,
So sorry, but you have 2 more minutes.
after that it becomes more worse in August this year. There are a lot of flooding all over Laos, most including Vientiane capital. In addition, we are reports from the local that $10 million aid from aid was in misappropriated for the normal. They use for the normal road construction instead of they use for the people need help. Thank you.
Aloha. I know we only have a brief amount. We do see a persistent pattern of prejudice and persecution of peoples. How many people in the room see similar situations in their states? Yeah. It's definitely Cambodia. I think definitely most people in the room. How many people want to see change? Okay, good. This side we're just going to sit for a little while, that's fine. And so, if we look at it, you really see this is the 25th anniversary of the Vienna World Conference. That's when we really had the Bangkok Declaration to counter the cultural relativism argument. It's the 70th anniversary of the UDHR. And if you look at what's going on, civil and political rights are collapsing. Really, civil society's space is shrinking and suffocating. But we know civil society has to stand together in solidarity, and that's why we come to the ASEAN meeting. We also know corruption is denying dignity. We know another generation will not be able to have economic, social, and cultural rights, and they will escape another generation who want to have equity and equality. Human rights defenders' lives are in danger, and more importantly, really, people protecting our planet, our sacred indigenous lands, are being killed at an alarming rate. So what can we do? If you look at the land grabbing situation and you look at the dams, we know we need to make a new direction, and let me just give 4 short points. First, the UPRs are coming up. Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos will all be reviewed. It's very important to do shopping reports. Next, sustainable development goals, the voluntary national reviews. We have to change the pattern. So far, all the governments ask polite phrases to each other instead of asking questions, and all the ASEAN states review each other. So we have to change that. One way is voluntary local reviews. If you have a good city where you're organizing, we can do BLRs. New York City did the first one, so we want to do those. Also, at the regional level, this morning we started with ICHR, and it was a really good panel by Forum Asia with the recommendations. And we have to make sure that ICHR, on its 10th year, 1 decade in existence, we have to focus next year and make sure that we focus on general recommendations, that we focus on important work there. And finally, it's also, since it is the 70th anniversary, we need to actualize Article 28. And there's a movement called Unite for Rights, and it's pushing for a global Bill of Rights that would be in each country. So it's a brand new website you can go to. Everyone can become a spark of light, and we can light up ASEAN together. So thank you very much. I want to respect the time and look forward to questions. Hello.
Thank you. So now we have the question and answer discussions. So the floor is yours, and we will have 3 questions for the first round of Q&A. I think people are so excited they don't even know how to start. Any comments? Maybe point of clarifications or questions? Anything? Okay, I think everyone is very excited and trying to digest information. Yes, please.
Thank you very much, and again, good evening, everyone. My name is Christian, and from Cambodia. I'm very interested in my friend's presentation, Mr. Kara's presentation, and I'm here just to clarify or to just confirm that this is what exactly happened in Cambodia. That is said that if we want, Cambodia can be the one model that not to conduct the election, yes. Because as you know, before the election time, there are many events that the government try to set up and to repress or to restrict the electoral observation as well, yes. And one more thing is like, as you may know, Cambodia respect the king, and then the government is like to link the serious criminal to the king, like in order to limit or to suppress the freedom of expression. Yeah. For example, you will be charged if you comment on something that related to the king. Yeah. For example, the king in some process, it is the king who make appointment, for example, to set up military general, it's like that, and then you comment the process that to appoint the military general, and then the government said that you will start the team, or the king, so you will be sent to the court. Yes. And another one is about the political party law. Because of the recently political party law, we know hope that in Cambodia there will be the qualified or the competitive opposition to run in the election. Because when the opposition becomes strong, the government try to use very bad provincial to manipulate the activity of the opposition and to shut it down. Yeah. And then the result of that is the political will of the people can be disrespected. This is the problem. Because after the party dissolved, everything is empty. Yeah, from the opposition. So it's very bad situation. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for the comment and addition on the last time my different perspective was that also affecting the region. Yes, Leah, the floor is yours.
Yeah. I'm very sorry to hear from democracy in Laos. Yeah, it's look some is the same in Cambodia. Yeah, and neighbor country. Yeah. Just my experience working on the issue is some look like in Laos. Yeah, so I think you are in abroad, alliance for democracy in abroad, but working for Laos, and you are raising about Laos issues, but some friends out here they are wrong. Yeah, they should be sit here and listen what are the country face challenges. Yeah, so yeah, we should have a collection in your alliance in abroad and in country to work together. Just like now, Josh raised about the UPR. Yeah, this year and in the beginning of 2019, yeah, now should we have a report on UPR and submit to the UPR in Geneva. Like me, about the Khmer people in Cambodia as well as in Southern Vietnam, we also submit UPR report about our issue of the challenges, yeah, in order to call for intervention of our issues in our country. Because I have no question, but just join some occasion to the island for democracy in Laos. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we are waiting for another commentator for questions before the panelists will respond to that. Any other feedback from the audience? Okay. If you have any burning questions that you don't feel comfortable sharing it with the group, feel free to reach out to the speakers directly. And I also would like to utilize this as request for the fellow panelists to give final statements and closing remarks before we close the session. So I think most of the response from the audience is more on suggestions and also highlighting that this is not a particular country's problem, but actually a systematic pattern in the region, especially in the Manikham country. Karuna, you want to add something?
Yeah.
Yes, I am Karna from the Cambodia and work with the ACSC human rights and development in Cambodia. That I think that that's all the mentioned like law and Myanmar also and the Cambodia. I think that all of you know about the situation in the Cambodia and the other country. They worry both about the human rights violation and also the election. How do we can respond from ASEAN to support? That's all. This is because that I think that very important. This is that ASEAN forum. They reach their well, money issues, but how can we resolve this case? Yes, please. We have money instrument in this international in Cambodia that the HR the country signed by the government, but they did not respect. How will the value of the international and ASEAN? This is you are seen together. Okay.
Thank you so much. So I would like to request the response from. Do you want to give any response? So maybe I'll start with Carol. Give any response and also like closing remarks.
Well, perhaps you're asking about how we can resolve this issue of democracy in Southeast Asia. No, let me start with a statement that says, no, democracy is not just about elections. So we, as an election monitoring organizations, we have actually noticed that there's this certain obsession with electoral processes. That when governments do think of democracy, they think of how are elections done, how elections should be done. So in this instance, we do actually say that there are other modalities for us to achieve democracy, and that the most important thing is that when citizens are empowered slowly but surely through engagement, both with their government and with outside actors. No? So from our perspective, it is important that support both within and outside are balanced out. So that is how we see it from my perspective. Thank you.
I would like to respond for a second question for you about Laos. Why some people from NGO from Laos go now? First, I would like to tell you about the law of Lao PDR. It's not allowed for independent NGO in Laos now. We must work independent in border. But we Alliance for Democracy in Laos, we have direct information from the Lao people in our country. We get us every day from internet, Facebook, on so on. And they need us to tell you every organization they work for the people in ASEAN countries. They work for human rights, to respect human rights. Now, I would like to tell how we can work together in the future. The ASEAN country needs we will use therefore relation to urge the government of the Lao PDR to respect and practice human rights according to the principle, treaty, and convention to which the Lao PDR is a signatory, including of freedom of information and office without restricting from the party, the freedom and form political party and organizations like NGO. Development aid for Laos has to be according better. This aid to be used for development of justice and human rights, suppressing corruption agency without exception, and ensure to the international aid truly fitting to the people. The development aid has to be for the poor Lao people in Laos and not to for privileged people. Thank you.
Even the Philippines are in the darkest days. We still see the light with the solidarity of ASEAN countries, and we are so blessed, and we'll be very happy if the group will send any to the government to respect the human rights and to protect the people. And we're still on the seeing the light, and yet our organization still documenting human rights violation in order to give, even in the international, the true story of the war on drugs. Thank you.
Thank you. So,
One last one. I think we really do have to repeal the laws that are restricting our human rights. And we see them in every country. They pass them, and then they have some Orwellian name, like it's to make human rights better, but it's just to take away the right. And if you look at Cambodia, from the last election to this one, they just restricted every human right every year. So we have to fight against those. Also, when we look at what's going on, we also have to fight when they label activists who just are doing their human rights work as terrorists, such as in the Philippines, the Special Rapporteur on Indigenous people was called a terrorist. So the governments are afraid of using anything to try to deny our fundamental freedoms and dignity. And then finally, I think the Sustainable Development Goals are an okay way that, especially in ASEAN countries, the governments are more worried about rights, to use human rights light, but to still push for all the important issues. Because they're economic, social, and cultural rights. They're definitely climate issues that are important to people in ASEAN. And they're also justice, dignity, and partnership. And I think we do have to stand in solidarity with one another. And just a little perspective, last week I was in Dili, in East Timor. And I remember when Jose Ramos Horta came to Hawaii in 1999, and he hadn't seen his home in 25 years. And we have to work together like that to be able to work. And you see that in Dili now, where they're still struggling for self-determination, but they're free. And we all know, unfortunately right now, it seems like ASEAN takes turns, where we get one good democracy and the rest all fall. But we have to work it so that more democracies stand up and many of you become leaders in change the countries that we live in today. So thank you, Mahalo.
Thank you. And I think from the panel and also the comments from the audience, we can see the common links, which is plan of restriction of freedoms in the region that affects the quality and also validation of having an election. And we also see how documentation has become one of the key strategies that we need to still use to document the restriction of freedoms in our countries. And also, last but not least, I think solidarity is very important as being echoed by everyone. But the representation of ASEAN people to highlight the alternative discourse and realities on the ground to the ASEAN bodies and also international mechanism is really important. We need to stand up and claim the representations and voice the realities to those mechanisms. So without further ado, I would like to close the sessions. Thank you so much for your participation, and let's give a round of applause to all the speakers and also for the audience. Please make sure that you do not leave your trash in this room.